So OG from Dota 2 has decided to enter CSGO, and in doing so, they have picked up an international lineup which has been tied together for a pretty long time. I feel like this has not been some type of well-kept secret that Aleksib, MBK, and Valde in particular were tied together pretty much after the Starlighter Berlin Major when MBK got kicked or departed Vitality. I know that there was some issues there between him and Alex and the rest of the team, and so MBK wound up being kind of the odd man out, and what seemed like to be almost somewhat of a last-minute decision after the Major was over. It wasn't really pre-planned, and so when that happened, you started really seeing things come together, especially with Aleksib being removed from Ints or benched in favor of Sunny coming in, and then those two were kind of tied together. Then Valde shortly afterward, whenever he got announced that he wasn't going to be starting with North anymore, and so this has really been out there for a while, and it seemed like they might even join the 100 Thieves organization at one point before they decided to go with the former Renegades team. But anyway, we've been kind of hearing these rumblings for quite some time, and now they're going to be joining OG. Now, I don't know much about OG because I don't really follow Dota 2. I obviously know that they've been successful in Dota 2. They've won the last two TIs. They've been successful in other tournaments. And it seems like this is them branching out and trying to be more of like a multi-esport organization. I think they've had like Super Smash Brothers players before or something like that. But I don't really know much about them other than that, to be honest with you. It seems like this is kind of a new thing for them to try to get into CSGO. It seems like a lot of organizations are trying to get more and more into CSGO. Obviously with the 100 Thieves and Evil Geniuses joining recently. There's talks of, Dignitas jumping back in at some point and TSM jumping back in at some point, and there's been a lot of murmurs about that because this new North American league that was coming around and just what 2020 looks like and how CSGO's been pretty stable. And so yeah, this lineup comes together, and so I'm not really going to focus on the organization much. I'm just going to kind of focus on the players. I'm just going to go kind of man for man, talk about each player, what they can bring to this team, and then at the end I'll maybe just try to give a little bit of a thought on how I think the team will be. So we'll start with Aleksib, the young in-game leader from Finland, who most of his experience has been either within the Finnish team with a team like Havu or with Ints over the last couple of years. Now obviously this is a team that was really building themselves up in 2018. I remember, back whenever they had like a finals appearance at DreamHack Open Montreal in 2018, and then obviously had the first place finish at Starlighter Season 6, and then, they just kind of rolled to the end of 2018 looking pretty good considering the fact that they had won the European Minor for IM Katowice to open up in 2019, and then obviously they also had the DreamHack Open Winter win at the end of 2018 as well. They went to Katowice, they took second place at that, and that was really where this team made a mark for themselves. They even went on to win Blast Madrid shortly thereafter, beating Astralis in the grand finals, which was big, as ending their nuke streak, all that good stuff. And so this team really had a lot going for them. And really, the only true bump in the road was Cologne, where they went out and dead last. But everything else they played, they had the second place at DreamHack Masters Dallas. They had the second at IM Chicago. This was a really solid top 3 team in the world, especially considering the fact that they didn't have that many star players. It's pretty much like Alu and Sergey, right? The main pieces of firepower. Ariel could occasionally pop off, and then they were just really good tactically. They had like really, really good defaults. They were a really default-oriented team. Definitely the slow play, the mid-round decision-making. They could mix in some faster pace executes, but nothing they did was like crazy, I don't know, like unique or would really catch you off guard. It was pretty standard, but it was just really well done. And then they did have enough talent to kind of bring it all together. So it seemed like Aleksib was looking like one of the most valuable in-game leaders in the scene at the time. But then shockingly, he was removed from the team in favor of Sunny. Now, this was mind-blowing because even if you did want to bring in Sunny to get additional firepower, which is a fair enough argument if you felt that was a weak point, and that you were eventually going to hit a ceiling unless you did bring in some firepower, it really felt like Aleksib, Alu, and Sergey should have been the 3 safest players on the team. It probably should have been X7 or Ariel that would come out for someone like Sunny. Now, everyone kind of hypes up Ariel that he has this incredible high skill set, an incredibly good mechanically, player. Definitely seems like he's a guy who can put up numbers. And yeah, he's definitely shown it at times. But he is like 25 years old. He's been playing in Ints for a couple of years now. And honestly, I don't think he ever overshadowed Sergey as far as like being a star of the team. Hell, even Alu, I think, was more of a star than Ariel has ever been for this team. And I feel like he's actually really had his struggles. So again, to me, I'm thinking it's going to be either X7 or Ariel to go, unless like something crazy happens with like inner dynamics, which seems to be the case. I'm not sure what it was, if it was like a behavioral issue or personalities clashed, or if someone just lacked motivation, didn't want to practice. I can't know. There's also been like rumors that apparently Aleksib wasn't even doing the bulk of the calling, that Alu was calling some of the big calls and some of the big games and stuff like that. But look, Ints has looked really dodgy ever since Aleksib got kicked from the team. So I mean, we can go off of insider information all you want, but if you're just looking at what happens in the server, it does feel like ISSAA is really missing something to Aleksib left, which means I'm going to have to give some credit for Aleksib as an in-game leader. Until he proves otherwise, I think he is definitely a very valuable asset to have when it comes to tactics. Definitely seems to be a good shot caller. His fragging isn't piss poor by any means for in-game leader standards either. He hasn't really ever had like too many like really, really bad overall tournaments, maybe just a couple. Most of the times it seemed like he was able to frag like pretty average, maybe even have a decent game here and there. He could play some entry roles to kind of set up other players. So that seems to be, what we see a lot now, in-game leaders kind of leading from the front, like someone like Nitro, although he's changed it up a bit on a couple of maps to facilitate some of the other players, or what you see with Glaive pairing up with Dupree, or what you see with Stanislaw pairing up with Tarek, and really the list goes on. We've really been seeing that with a lot of in-game leaders. So he can be that guy. He can be the first man in or something like that, setting up a player and then being the in-game leader. So I think he is going to really prove to be invaluable for this team. I think no matter what, if they have to make roster changes down the line, being able to rein in Aleksib is definitely good. Now, there's obviously always going to be concerns. International team, our personality is going to clash, our culture is going to clash, our philosophies on the game going to clash between him and other players, particularly when you have a guy like MBK who's always been a strong voice on his teams and he's even tried his hand at being a IGL. Valde was always a big secondary caller on North from what I could gather. So there are some concerns about that. Also, obviously, concerns about, his English is probably really, really good. In fact, I've seen him do plenty of interviews where I don't think his English lacks at all, but there is something to be said about maybe, calling off certain things in the heat of the moment in a really fast-paced environment where you don't have a lot of time to think and convey the message, or sometimes maybe things can get a little bit lost. Not sure that's going to affect him or not. This just really depends, but I think that he should prove to be really valuable on this team. And I'll leave it at that. Until he proves otherwise, unless the team's really going to shit and it looks like they're a mess tactically or something like that, then maybe all of a sudden you have to kind of second guess, how good of an in-game leader Aleksib is. But all the evidence so far points to the fact that he can really define roles well in a team, set up the default, set up the mid-round decision-making, set a foundation down from which to build from, and throw in those pace of changes every now and then to keep your opponents guessing. So definitely like this pickup. Now, MBK comes into the team, to me, is likely as a role player. It's been a long time since I've seen MBK deliver star performances in a fragger role or something like that. I mean, it's not that he's always playing poorly. He definitely did have several events where he did lack individually for vitality towards the end of his time there, but more often than not, kind of like Aleksib, or maybe a little bit better than Aleksib, he's going to kind of be hopefully you're like third or fourth best player. That's probably the perfect position for him. Let him be more of a role player, maybe play like one of the solo roles, because he's going to play it smart and he's not going to give up frags, and he's going to be able to gather information and relay it. He's going to be able to kind of give you an idea what's going on his side of the map, which may help kind of fuel your mid-round decision-making and things of that nature. I feel like that's probably the best place for him. You could throw him in an entry fragger role, I guess. I mean, he is a guy who's played a lot of different roles throughout his career, but it just seems like you would want that to be more of a star player doing that type of thing, being the second guy in or third guy in or something like that. So I feel like for MBK, again, it's been several years since I've seen him really play like a true star role, and I expect that he'll be more of, like I said, kind of the glue of the team, more of a supportive player, facilitating some of the other talent on the team, again, maybe helping with some calling. Though I am a little bit worried about that, because I know he did an interview that was posted on the Reddit. I think it's like on one of the French sites, Vakram or Vakram. I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. But in that, he kind of mentioned the fact that there was a possibility for like a dual calling setup, which really irks me, because it seemed like him and Alex butting heads was like a big problem for vitality, and it seems like MBK at times has thought he could be an in-game leader, but never really panned out to go well for him when he decided to take on that role. So again, this does lead me to be concerned a little bit about, philosophy of game clashes or something like that, where that could lead the team to kind of just have like too many cooks in the kitchen, which could affect the identity of the team, especially again because I think Valde is a guy who likes to be very vocal and maybe make some mid-round calling as well. So I do wonder if maybe there's like too many leadership figures of people who want to be leaders on this team, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. I think again he can be a role player, a smart role player. Again, he's not going to make too many crazy mistakes. He's going to be able to help out in many different ways other than just fragging, and he still is a decent fragger. Again, he's not going to be a star player, but I think he can certainly play a role in this team and be a nice building block. And so I'll just really kind of leave it at that. I know it might be a little bit short-winded for someone like MBK who has such a storied career, but I feel like everyone out there already really kind of knows what this guy's capable of. Then we come to Valde. Now, Valde should be the star of this team, or certainly one of the top two players in this team. This is a very, very strong individual player. He's also quite flexible. It seems like the role that suits him best is more of a solo player, semi-lurk type player, although I have seen him be able to be aggressive at times, and even when he was temporarily in-game leading on North, he would sometimes put himself in kind of like entry role positions because it just made sense for him since he was the IGL. He'd pair up with Gade. He kind of freed up AZ and KRB to play some of the slower roles, and so I've seen him flex into things like that. And even in his past, like, you know, on certain maps, he would be a guy that could really cause disturbances in his individual position. And obviously, if you're going for like a set piece, he could still be kind of like a third, second guy in type figure that could trade frag and help open up. So I think he's very flexible in that regard. I feel like in default, he probably will be a solo player. You know, he's to be the guy like playing solo on connector on overpass, or, you know, either playing outside B tunnels or outside long A on Dust 2, or being the banana guy or the apartments guy on Inferno. He's going to be that type of player, I feel like. But when you're going for a hit, when you're going for a set piece, he can still be one of those trade fraggers. Like, think of Rops, for instance, on Mouse Sports, or, you know, maybe what, like, Crims was doing on Fnatic before Flesha joined back, where you have these guys who are playing the edges of the map, but they are really good at the timing plays on, like, peeking out a palace or peeking up a ramp on Mirage, like what Rops and Crims used to do, what Fletch is trying to do now for Fnatic. So I feel like he could be that type of guy. Very similar to Magus is another person I think that is like a direct comparison, because they actually do play a lot of the same positions on T and CT side at different points of times throughout their careers, and they've definitely drawn some parallels in that regard. So I think that's probably how he's best suited. He doesn't have to be like a Zipix or something like that. It's like a hard support, hard learn. Maybe that can be more MBK, but I feel like Valde's going to be that guy that can really flex. Again, I know that his individual level fell off a bit, but that's because a lot of was just going to tatters in North. He was having the in-game lead. The bulk of his career on North has looked like a star player, right? I mean, he's had plenty of big events with North throughout his career. Obviously, his heroic days, he looked super, super promising. So I think that he can be the big piece of firepower this team needs to be a contender. He just needs more of it, right? Like, he can't be the only one. But I think that Valde, this trio, Aleksib, MBK, Valde, this is a great foundation to work from. Then the fourth player is going to be Issa. This is a guy that obviously gained a lot of notoriety, like in 2017 and 2018, playing with Hellraisers. Definitely a guy who looked like a really, really strong player. Again, though, Hellraisers never really did much in the Tier 1 level. Again, they played really strong on some DreamHack Open events and like CAS minors and things of that nature. But really the only like big Tier 1 performances this team ever had was like, I don't know, like the Face It Major where they got top 8. That's really it. Like, everything else, when they played at a big Tier 1 event, they usually went out dead last or pretty early on in the group stage. Again, they played well at Tier 2, like winning bets at Masters, taking second at DreamHack Open Tours, different things like that. Is also a guy who seems pretty role flexible. I feel like when he first joined Hellraisers, he was more of a kind of peripheral player, you know, kind of playing more of the solo roles, because Angel was obviously kind of more of the entry fragger on that team, and even Dead Fox kind of flexed into like a secondary entry role since he gave up opping to Voxic during that time period. But then at a certain point, it kind of changed up, and you saw Issa playing the more active roles, particularly when Bondit came in the team. You could see Issa really kind of being the number 2 man behind Angel and kind of being that secondary entry fragger. So with that said, I think that you'll likely see Aleksib and Issa paired up as the entry duo, where Valde and MBK are going to be playing the solo roles, and then mantuu is going to be playing the primary AWP role. So that's probably how defaults are going to shake out. My big concern is how Issa is going to perform, because I feel individually he really fell off on Hellraisers towards the end of 2018 and throughout pretty much all of 2019. He never really looked like a strong individual player anymore, and even in the past he could be seen as kind of streaky, where like he'd have a really big event where he went ludicrous, like the CIS minor for the Face It Major or Betsnet Masters or DreamHack Open Tours, like some of these different events in 2018 where he looked like an absolute monster, but then he would be a little bit underwhelming at like the really big Tier 1 events, like when he played at Epicenter, or like when he played in, you know, the IM Katowice Major this year. These different big events, it didn't seem to translate. And even some of the smaller events he played in at times, he would look a little bit lackluster. So the thing is, like, I'm pretty sure Valde can be a stable, consistent star player, but Aleksib and MBK probably aren't going to be. So if anyone else in the team is going to be, it's going to have to be Issa. If this team's actually going to be like a true top 10 contender, you know, at some point trying to fight for a top 5 spot, but even just to get within the top 10 and be stable there, especially as strong as the top 10 is now, man, you got Astralis, Liquid, EG, Mouse Sports on the rise, Fnatic is sitting out there, you know, 100 Thieves actually still play pretty strong. There's several teams out there that I feel are still going to be way at an advantage in comparison to this team, just on pure firepower alone, forget everything else. So that is definitely something that you really have to kind of look out for. And then look, with Mantuu, I'm not going to spend too much time here because I don't really know anything about this guy. I haven't really watched many of Alternate Attacks' games or anything like that because I haven't really played any notable lands. There's really been nothing from them, right? I think the biggest stuff they've played in is like regional stuff for ESL for like the German scene, and then Copenhagen games and things of that nature. Not much land play. Hell, even for Mantuu, most of his online play is like ISSAA Advanced, different land qualifiers, stuff from like Loot Bet, just United Masters League, like really, really small time stuff. Not really playing against elite level teams at any kind of regular basis. And then on top of that, he wasn't even always a primary opper. I think he was originally for Alternate Attacks until they picked up this player by the name of Slacks or Slacksy. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but when that happened, and he kind of went to a secondary opping role, which proves that he's role flexible. So maybe you can run more fire rifle setups because of that and get away with it because he doesn't have to have an op. But I don't know how this guy's going to op at an elite level if he has to play against big name teams. Yeah, it's one of those things where, to conclude, I think that there are some valuable pieces here. Aleksib be definitely a valuable in-game leader to have right now until he proves otherwise by failing or something like that. MBK, a good role player, a good glue player. Valde, definitely a star level player in those individual like kind of solo roles on T side, and maybe some side anchoring, things of that nature. And so those three for sure are super valuable. Issa, to me, a bit of a question mark. It depends on what type of level he brings to the table because I've definitely seen flashes of him being able to be a brilliant player in a couple of different roles. And so if he can be that number 2 guy next to Valde when it comes to delivering firepower, this team could be quite good. But I just don't know if that's going to happen or not. There might need to be some thoughts on role swapping, or maybe even have to make moves down the line if you can't find yourself getting the results that you want. And then with Mantuu, complete question mark. No idea how good this guy's going to be. I know that he certainly wasn't their first choice. They were looking at Yumpy, obviously from SJ Gaming. They were looking at Poison, who eventually went over in the complexity. And so I think that they didn't really get the star opera that they wanted, but maybe Mantuu can develop into something. I don't know. Personally, I would have thought going for like Otto from Crazy wouldn't have been a bad shot, especially since they already lost 2 of their top players to G2. There was a point there where it looked like Ships might be departing the team as well, who they had just picked up. So if that team was kind of going this shit anyway, and there's a lot of issues with the Crazy's organization and payments and stuff like that, I feel like Otto actually wouldn't have been a bad shout to maybe go after. Maybe they did. Maybe it didn't work out. Don't really know. I don't really know what other opping prospects were out there for them to address. So fair enough if this is what they think is best. Maybe they enjoyed his personality traits and if he was a team player and stuff in scrims. Again, I don't know what's going on internally, but yeah, I think that they could certainly be. I think they're going to be like more of an upset team, and they're probably going to settle somewhere in the top 20 pretty rapidly, but I don't know how they're going to be able to break into the top 10 considering the field. I mean, as far as our current top 10, the only teams I could see really slipping out are teams like FaZe and Vitality and NIP. Like, those teams could certainly continue to struggle, maybe slip out, and then maybe you see this team slip in some way, but I feel like the top 5 is pretty strong right now. I think 100 Thieves is still pretty strong. I think Navi is only going to get better. So it's going to be hard for them to gain traction and actually really launch into like elite status, but we'll have to see how it plays out. Also a little bit concerned they don't have a coach. I think that could maybe help balance things out if there are some, philosophy on the game issues or something like that between players that could maybe help be like a mediator, could help support the team. But I think it's a fair enough thought to kind of wait and see what you really need. If you need more of like an analyst coach, or whether you need like a more of a leader of men type coach, or what coach would fit best. So that's fair enough that that's going to be something that they do down the line instead. But we'll just have to sit back and wait and see what happens. It's certainly an interesting team, certainly some valuable pieces. I just don't know if they're all going to fit together, and I don't know if the individual form is going to be there on some of them to really push them forward. But again, time will tell. Hope you enjoy this content. If you did, please follow, subscribe for more. Catch you next time.